Hello, my name is Brian Wallace. This is for Duquesne University, GILT 520, where we'll be exploring emerging technologies. My technology is on virtual reality. The future is here and has come faster than anyone thought. The ultimate technology looms on the horizon, the age of virtual reality in schools. Ironically, Reed and Sykes stated this in their 1999 article, Virtual Reality in Schools, the Ultimate Educational Technology. Sadly, virtual reality as a quote-unquote emerging technology is in fact not new. Virtual reality made a huge splash in the 90s, but collapsed into near obscurity a few years later. Virtual reality as an industry has not evolved as much as everyone hoped in the last 25 years. Granted, there are still a handful of impressive virtual reality companies active today, but most are selling products at a price point reserved for Fortune 500 companies and the military. As an aside, most of the research I found on virtual reality was conducted during the 90s, with very little, if any, conducted in recent years. So you ask, why bother exploring it any further? Because, as an emerging technology, and virtual reality truly is still emerging, it has the power to completely and utterly transform education as we know it today. Let's start with an overview of virtual reality. First, what is virtual reality? It is like being Lewis Carroll's Alice and stepping through her looking glass into a strange new world. Virtual reality is a cutting-edge technology that allows students to step through a computer screen into a three-dimensional, interactive environment by putting on a special headset and glove. It places students inside of a simulated environment that really looks and feels like the real world. Through virtual reality, we are convinced we're in another world experiencing some event and doing things that don't physically exist. Virtual reality is a technology that allows students to explore and manipulate computer-generated, three-dimensional multimedia environments in real time. Let's now explore types of virtual reality environments. There are two main types of virtual reality environments. First, desktop virtual reality environments, as well as total immersion virtual reality environments. Desktop virtual reality environments are presented on an ordinary computer screen and are usually explored by keyboard, mouse, wand, joystick, or touchscreen. Second Life, Active Worlds, and web-based virtual tours are all examples of commonly available desktop virtual reality formats. Total immersion virtual reality environments are presented on multiple room-sized screens or through a stereoscopic head-mounted display unit. Additional specialized equipment, such as a data glove, worn as one would wear a regular glove, enables the participant to interact with the virtual environment through normal body movements. Sensors on the head unit and data glove track the viewer's movements during exploration and provide feedback that is used to revise the display, enabling real-time, fluid interactivity. As users experience immersion, or the feeling of being inside and part of that world, she is also able to interact with her environment in meaningful ways. An effective virtual reality experience causes you to become unaware of your real surroundings and focus completely on your existence inside the virtual environment. Now, opinions differ on what exactly constitutes a true virtual reality experience, but in general, it should include the following two things. First, three-dimensional images that appear to be life-size from the perspective of the user. And secondly, the ability to track a user's motions, particularly his head and eye movements, and correspondingly adjust the images on the user's display to reflect the change in perspective. Now, let's explore immersive virtual reality through a short video.
Don't Don't forget, you're in a room.
9 years ago, Professor Jeremy Bailenson started the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford University.
Good job.
What we do in this lab is we ensure that the perceptual experience you get far surpasses than any of these old cliched notions of virtual reality.
Most people toss those cliches once they get a taste of virtual reality or VR at this lab, myself included.
There we go. Woo! Oh, there.
During our visit, lab researchers demoed 2 experiences. In the first, users chop down a tree using a force feedback or haptic device that simulates the feel of sawing. In the second experience, called the pit, users walk a narrow plank, carefully avoiding a steep drop.
One of the reasons this environment feels so realistic, as if I could fall at any moment now, is because the lab uses technology that provides sensory feedback in 3 ways. There are devices called butt kickers that are mounted underneath the floor to make it shake. 22 speakers provide audio input, and then there's this, the head-mounted display that gives users a stereoscopic view of their virtual world.
That view is clear and sharp, not the choppy video you may expect.
We refresh what you're seeing 100 times a second, and sound gets put in the exact right spot where it should be in the room.
18 desktop PCs handle user tracking and rendering the environment, while an infrared optical system monitors subjects with extreme precision.
We have very sensitive apparatus that can detect that movement, for example, up to an accuracy of 1/4 of 1 millimeter error, and very frequently 100 times a second. We know exactly how you've moved, and we've changed your senses to accurately update the virtual world to reflect that physical movement.
These experiments have very different goals. The tree chopping demo explores whether conservation behavior can be increased by recreating the sensation of cutting down a tree. Researchers have found these subjects later tend to use and waste less paper. The pit demonstrates how VR can help people overcome phobias, such as the fear of heights.
Oh my God.
This more lifelike iteration of virtual reality is likely to become a valuable tool for a range of industries, from automobiles to healthcare. Ford, for example, uses VR to create virtual test drives.
Ford is using virtual reality to build car simulations so that they can examine products before people enter them. So it's much cheaper to change the size of a virtual car than it is to change the size of a physical one, and they can test out different designs.
And at the University of Washington, a VR game set in an Arctic zone called Snow World helps ease pain for burn victims during wound treatment. Virtual reality for real-world benefits. For Smart Planet, I'm Sumi Das.
Now let's take a look at the brief history of virtual reality. The concept of virtual reality has been around for decades, even though the public really only became aware of it in the early 1990s. In the mid-1950s, a cinematographer named Morton Hillig envisioned a theater experience that would stimulate all his audience's senses, drawing them into the stories more effectively. He built a single-user console in the 1960s called the Sensorama that included a stereoscopic display, fans, odor emitters, stereo speakers, and a moving chair. In 1965, a computer scientist named Ivan Sutherland envisioned what he called the ultimate display. Using this display, a person could look into the virtual world that would appear as real as the physical world the user lived in. This vision guided almost all the developments within the field of virtual reality. John Lanier coined the term virtual reality in 1987. In the 1990s, the media latched onto the concept of virtual reality and ran with it. The resulting hype gave many people an unrealistic expectation of what virtual reality technologies could do. As the public realized that virtual reality was not yet as sophisticated as they had been led to believe, sadly, their interest waned. Today, driven by gaming consoles such as the Wii and Kinect, the past few years have demonstrated a sharp acceleration of the realism of virtual reality. However, the technology still has quite a long way to go before the photographic realism and behavioral realism rivals a real-world experience. Now, let's look at the implications for education, specifically the advantages. Boring. To many students today, school is just that. It's boring. Relying on textbook reading and lectures can only go so far in learning, while CD-ROM-based educational programs often merely just do this. They transfer information from a book to a computer screen. Attention spans and neurological pathways are marked differently from that of previous generations. Virtual reality programs with their lush graphical landscapes and textbooks full of information surround the student, engaging and exciting them like no other video game. Utilizing route memorization as an educational strategy is no longer an option, as in many academic areas, student success may depend on their ability to envision and manipulate abstract, multidimensional informational spaces. Students have the opportunity to take advantage of the affordances of simulated environments, exploring a scenario's dimensions and pitfalls as they learn. It is exactly this type of motivational process, the learning while doing, that lures today's educator to virtual reality technology. Through virtual reality, students can observe and manipulate normally inaccessible objects, variables, and processes in real time. The ability of these technologies to make what is abstract and intangible now make them concrete and manipulatable suits them to the study of natural phenomena and abstract concepts. Virtual reality bridges the gap between the concrete world of nature and the abstract world of concepts and models. This makes them a welcome alternative to the conventional study of content, which requires students to develop understandings based on textual descriptions and 2D representations. This ability to work hands-on and view objects from multiple viewpoints can potentially deepen learning and recall for a student because the student is experiencing the construction of new knowledge. An interface that allows the manipulation of 3D objects in virtual space maximizes the potential of the way people acquire new knowledge by physical manipulation of objects and concepts, which in turn allows the learner to physically see causal relations between action and result. As a result, the brain can more rapidly make assessments and connections as the learner interacts in their virtual environment than it can when learning takes place in a largely decontextualized, non-immersive setting. Virtual reality has the ability to scaffold student learning and benefits students through the allowance of greater self-awareness, support for interaction, and the enabling of real-time collaboration. Finally, individuals learn better when subject matter is presented in a way consistent with their preferred learning style. Research has shown that learners benefit from virtual reality irrespective of their learning styles. This shows that virtual reality offers promise in accommodating individual differences in terms of learning styles. Sadly, virtual reality is not without its concerns. Let's first take a look at latency. When a user detects latency, it causes him to become aware of being in an artificial environment and destroys that sense of immersion that they've been experiencing. The big challenges in the field of virtual reality are developing better tracking systems, finding more natural ways to allow users to interact with a virtual environment, and decreasing the time it takes to build virtual spaces. As for creating virtual worlds, it can take a long time to create a convincing virtual environment. The more realistic the environment, the longer it takes to make. It could take an entire team of programs more than a year to duplicate a real room accurately in virtual space. Which is a great segue to my next point: cost. The most advanced immersive headset in the world can be found at Stanford University. This one piece of equipment costs $45,000. Yet, that's a drop in the bucket when you think that 14 years ago, a $200,000 computer was needed to run a sophisticated virtual reality program. Today, most virtual environment systems are powered by normal personal computers. PCs are sophisticated enough to develop and run the software necessary to create virtual environments. Recent and ongoing developments in the technology of virtual reality have substantially reduced its costs, resulting in a wider exploitation of its abilities as a training tool and educational medium. Now let's explore pedagogy. Beyond the more obvious limitations of budget and technical knowledge, most teachers do not have a clear idea of what design and development considerations are important when planning to implement a virtual reality system. Teachers must understand its implications for learning and formulate a vision of where they want to go to enrich their own curriculum and their students' learning. School administrators must figure out the optimal application of virtual reality for each situation, while at the same time not falling into the trap of buying new technology for the sake of having just that, new technology. Now let's look at the reality of virtual reality. Mary Witten of UNC Chapel Hill believes that the entertainment industry will drive the development of most virtual reality technologies going forward. Based on my research, I don't believe we are going to see immersive virtual reality set up in every school across America in the near future. However, what I do see is the advancement of this: 3D learning. Roughly 185,000 3D-ready projectors will be sold in the U.S. schools for grades kindergarten through 12 this year. Financial concerns still surround 3D learning, but is much more attainable than immersive virtual reality environment. Cyberscience 3D and educational software line costs $10,000 for a package that includes software, a computer, a projector, and about 30 pairs of 3D glasses. The company's 3D material includes a periodic table, dissectable fetal pigs, and a deconstructible V8 engine. Strategies to stay current. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, research on virtual reality and its role in education has dwindled since the 1990s. As such, the best way to stay current is to keep up with the technology education trade journals as well as the national news. Some of my favorite include the Journal and Edutopia. Now let's explore the research methods used. Primarily, I use Gumberg Library and I search the database ERIC. I also used readings as well as handouts from GILT 520, and I did most of my internet searches using Google. The following are my references. These are my text references that were in this presentation as well as in my narration. And finally, here are my image citations. I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation and learned a bit about virtual reality. Thank you and have a great day.